Hi, my name is Maddi Niebanck, and when I was 22 years old, a week after I graduated from Georgetown University, I suffered a stroke that quite nearly took my life. After I'd graduated college, I'd made plans for the next week to go to New York Presbyterian Hospital and have an elective brain surgery. Since I was 7 years old, I suffered debilitating migraines and no medicine could help. All I could do was lie down in a dark room and hope that I was able to fall asleep. I often got so much nausea and had to throw up, and nothing could make me feel better. When I was 14 years old, I suffered a migraine that lasted over 20 days, and so I went into the ER and had an IV treatment. My neurologist at the time also had ordered me an MRI to see if something else was going on, because, let's be real, no one should be having migraines that last a month long without stopping. And so the MRI revealed that I had what is called an arteriovenous malformation, which is an abnormal tangle of blood vessels in my brain in the right occipital lobe. And the doctors assumed that this was causing my migraines, but they couldn't be sure. Anyways, it's not good to have an AVM in your brain because you stand the risk at any moment of it rupturing. So at any point, I had this ticking time bomb in my brain that could burst, causing a massive stroke or even death. And so I consulted with many brain surgeons, and I really didn't like the potential of this thing in my brain rupturing, and so I decided to get a brain surgery. I talked to many different neurosurgeons, some of which said, "Oh, this thing in your brain is too big to operate on, we can't remove it," and others who insisted that I had to get it removed immediately because it was a danger to me and my health. So I ultimately decided that after I graduated from university, I would get the brain surgery and remove this because, quite honestly, I didn't like the idea of this thing in my brain potentially bursting and causing so much damage. And so I went in for the brain surgery, but one of the preoperative procedures that I had to have prior to the operation ended up causing a blood clot in my brain, which burst, causing a massive stroke, and I had to be rushed into an emergency surgery. So I find it kind of ironic that the very thing that I was trying to prevent happening ended up happening and was caused by this thing in my brain. So anyways, I was rushed into an emergency brain surgery, and 7 hours later, I emerged alive but completely paralyzed on the left side of my body. And so began a very long period of rehabilitation for me. The doctors weren't sure if I would recover, how much I would recover, and no one knew to what extent. All I could do was put in the effort and kind of see what happened. And so I went into, after 15 days in the ICU, I was discharged to an inpatient subacute rehab facility in New Jersey, which is where I live. And in that rehab, I learned how to walk, first with a cane, then with a different cane, and then without, and then was able to walk without assistance, finally. I learned how to move my left arm again, and the unfortunate thing is that I'm left-handed, so not having this hand was like a huge thing I had to overcome. And finally, after inpatient therapy, I went to outpatient therapy. Was seeing a therapist 2 to 3 times a week, and that helped a lot with me in improving my gait, my walking. I learned to walk without a cane, and then also just to move my arm a little bit. I went to a special therapy clinic called the Taub Clinic in Birmingham, Alabama, which specializes in constraint-induced movement therapy. So in this special therapy program that I went to, my good arm, my right hand, was constrained with a mitt, and so I was forced to use my affected arm, the left arm, for every single activity, and that helped me tremendously in being able to gain a little bit of functionality back with my arm. In the time since I had the stroke, I've also published 2 books, and that has been an amazing thing for me. Soon after my stroke, I was having a conversation with one of my college professors, and he told me that while yes, this sucked and this is a terrible thing to have happened to you, he said you should use this time to your advantage because you'll never have this much free time with no job, no real worries apart from your recovery again. So why not make the most of it? learn what you can about something you're interested in, and write a book. And I was like, okay, that sounds like an awesome idea. So I've always had a long time interest in fashion. And so I decided that I would write my book about the changing landscape of the fashion industry. And so I set up interviews with editors, models, small business owners, anyone really in the fashion industry, talked to them, wrote up their stories, and then put it into a book, which is called Fashion Forward, abbreviated FWD, How Today's Culture Shapes Tomorrow's Fashion. And that book is available on Amazon. Now, in that book, I also kind of talked a little bit about my experience with recovery from stroke and how writing a book has been an incredible tool for me to work on my cognitive rehab and gaining back the skills that I had once taken for granted, like, for example, my memory, my attention to detail, my ability to strategize, organize, and plan, things that I had taken for granted, but that actually the stroke in my brain ended up causing me to have problems with these very things that I once be able to do without thinking about. And so by writing that first book, I was able to focus on my rehab in a sense. And so that was really cool. And I shared in that book about fashion, while fashion was the main purpose of the book, I also wrote little anecdotes that I weaved in about my experience with recovery and how writing this book actually helped me to get better. And then, so actually a year after that, that first book was published in September 2018. And then in April of 2020, my second book was published. And that book is called Fast Forward, The Fully Recovered Mindset. And it's more focused on my experience with stroke recovery and just my journey of the past 3 years. It's been a really great experience for me having written these 2 books, and I've gotten some amazing feedback from people who have read the books and said they really liked it and they got something out of it. And honestly, that's all I wanted from this experience. If I can just help one person by sharing my story, I feel like I would have done my job. Having a stroke has given me a renewed sense of meaning and purpose in my life, and so I want to use the time that I've been given back to make a difference and help and empower other people who might be going through hardships. And so my hope is that my book does just that for other people. If you're interested in contacting me, I can be found on Instagram at Maddi Stroke of Luck. So I would love to hear from any of you and how you're doing during this pandemic and overcoming challenges. Thank you.